Hi, my name is Dennis Siri. I am Executive Director and founder of the New York City Independent Film Festival, Independent in Spirit, International at Heart, and this is the New York City Independent Film Festival Meet the Filmmakers podcast. Join us while we meet this year's filmmakers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi, and welcome to this episode of our podcast. And we're here with the cast, or the crew, and some of the cast from Fitting Descriptions. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, and tell us about yourselves.
Tiff, you start.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. We're delighted to be here. I'm Tiffany Bedwell. I am co-director, producer, and actor in Fitting Descriptions. So I started acting in high school and started off in stage, and thought I'd always do theater, and came to Chicago and pursued theater, and sort of happened into TV, film, commercial, and find myself here now in the indie film world, and making, independent films with John and a bunch of awesome independent filmmakers here in Chicago. And this is my first foray into producing and even helping create the story to a short film. So this is the beginning of what I hope to be a very rich and long road in indie filmmaking.
I'm John Mossman, and I was a co-director of this. Worked with Tiffany right before this in my feature film, Good Guy with a Gun, which is out now on major platforms. You can find it. She's fabulous. Where I started in a little town called Baraboo, Wisconsin, which is the birthplace of the circus. And it's just filled with spectacular characters, and people are fond of saying circus didn't start here by accident. It's pretty freaky, bunch of weirdo people, just oddballs. No one has everyone's got a nickname in Baraboo, which I love. Everyone grew up with a nickname. No one's actually called their real name. And it also had a circus, a theater rather, that was related to Al Ringling. Al Ringling and one of his brothers built one of the early movie palaces that was based on the actual theater of it was a French style. I think it might have been based on like a miniature Versailles. It's incredibly opulent. It's where the local communities would do their theater. So it was my introduction to theater was like a place that was like hundreds of seats, always packed, and it was opulent, and balconies. And I thought, well, this is great. This is what it's always going to be like. And so that was my introduction. The basement smelled of Aquanet and Bad Electric and Barrymore DNA. And because it was just this old vaudeville house, and I was hooked. It was theater. My mom was a theater person, and she pushed me into it. And then my dad was a photographer and a sound engineer for all the community theater things there, and he sort of comes from a jazz background. So and he always had photography going on in the house. He had a dark room in the the basement, and a lot of cameras. So between those two, it was done. And having a town like that, it was, we didn't have organized sports or anything. So, you had a hyperactive kid, put him on stage at the Al, and that'll whip him into shape.
Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So I guess my first question is, what made you want to be filmmakers?
So, yeah, as I said, I started off thinking, hey, I'm only going to do theater, and, because that's where the real acting is. And loved having the control of the beginning, middle, end of participating in, the story linearly. And as I found myself coming in this direction, I did an independent film called Dreaming Grand Avenue, written and directed by Hugh Schultz. That was about 5 years ago. And that was my first indie film. And then, COVID hit, and then, after COVID, stumbling out of COVID and, running into John, it was sort of kismet, I guess. He mentions Good Guy with a Gun, which is the feature film that he did. So I played one of the leads in that. He just sort of was like, would you want to audition for this? And I was like, sure. What is it? Is it a play? And he's like, no, it's a film. I'm like, film, huh? okay. And so
And it's starting in like
like,
a week,
yeah.
3 weeks.
Yeah. And so anyway, like it was just truly an amazing experience, playing Tessa and Good Guy with a Gun. And, getting to work with such an amazing cast, to work with John, and truly, John, I'm making you feel like, but like watching you and the way that you make films was what made me be like, I want to actually be a filmmaker, like not just an actor who comes on set for a few days, not just like, barely know anyone and just kind of pop in, pop out, but like a filmmaker who makes a film from the beginning to the middle to the end and even after that. So that's it was really kind of, John, and then the people in the indie filmmaking community around here that made me be like, no, I want to be a filmmaker. And so that's what brought us about, a year and a half ago to starting to do this short film.
Okay. And John, what brought you into the filmmaking world?
Yeah, man. First of all, that is the best thing anyone could say is that. And one of the reasons, honestly, just to dovetail off that really briefly, one of the reasons that I felt the film turned out so well was I found myself surrounded by these incredibly invested team players that were so deep into story and to enter the whole process that it was like being. And I'm really big into ensemble. I've had a theater company for, I don't know, 20 years, my wife and I, and 25 years now, and it's still alive. It survived all this, which is kind of miraculous. But we're like, I'm an ensemble builder. That's what I want to work with. And I was with these people who were like, all I want around me are actors, and actors should be directors. And that was sort of the philosophy I was adopting at that point. And so my crew is surrounded by actors on almost all positions. And the whole hyphenate thing is happening more and more. So like Tiffany doing this makes complete sense, makes absolute sense.
I'm so
That's
glad.
it. Yeah. But the thing that got me into it, I remember it distinctly. I always liked having a camera in my hands because, I had like, even right now, I'm looking at a frame, right? I'm looking at a frame and I'm like constantly, because I have this kid with crazy, like OCD really bad. And Tourette's and things like that, where I had zero control, but inside this box, I could control everything. And I can control it with an edit. And so I loved that aspect of it. And it was able to combine sort of the loves of my father and loves of my mother. And then it's like, I went to Middleton then for a couple of years for high school. This town outside Madison had a great teacher called Dan Van Lannen. And I don't know where you are, Dan, but you let us do shit that other teachers did not. And I don't know if you got fired, but if you did, I want to thank you for setting me on my path. The other thing that set me on my path was my mom. When I told her I wanted to make a feature, and she said, I want to make a movie. And I was like 10 or 11. I lost a competition for making a movie or something in Wisconsin, where they were going to have a competition for kids our age. And I lost it. I was all angry. It's like, I'm going to make my own. I informed her of that. And she said, you can't make a movie. Do you know how much that costs? And that wasn't like my mom really generally to squelch an idea, but it was, pre-digital revolution. But I remember saying, I'm going to make a movie. I'll show you. I'm going to make a movie, and I'm going to premiere it at the Al Ringling Theater. And I did. And on that day when I did, it was about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I realized my entire career path had been based on a grievance.
To show mom.
Yeah.
In some ways, you answer my next two questions. And how long have you been doing this, and how many movies have you made? It's great when you guys just talk. This is perfect. So.
No, oh, well, you have no problem with us doing that.
Okay, great. So
we laugh a lot and we talk a lot. Yeah.
So how long?
It might be easier, John, for me to count the number of films I've worked on, just like indie film wise, because I've worked on as a day player on like some films that were non-indie films, like larger films, but the ones that are more artistically fulfilling and all of that for me, obviously, are the risks that you can take in indie film. So for me, I have 2 feature films, 1 supporting role, 1 lead role, that I mentioned already. And then another one that I just shot a principal role in, that's in post-production right now, called Survivor, Soldier, Sinner, Savior, where I play a mother again, and this time a not so good mother, a very bad mother. Actually, John, you're in that one too.
I know we didn't get to act with each other, but I'm in that with
Yeah.
you.
But and then short films. So yeah, obviously fitting descriptions, this one. And then there's another one I'm shooting right now called Grave Expectations. So that's it. I think I can count on, I think one hand of the indie films that I've done, and like 2, 3 other, like, day playing roles. So it's a little bit new to me, but I'm starting to feel kind of in control and like coming into my own in the film world. And I still love theater. It will always be my first love. But I'm finding a really nice home here in the filmmaking world. I feel really good about it.
Cool. And John, how would you answer that?
I started out, I think, in that high school class in Middleton, Wisconsin, making movies. And I'd seen my brother before that make a couple Super 8 movies, and he was able to do things to me that were like, for me, they're like magical. Those movies did. It's like, how did you fall out of a window and then land on the ground? Oh, you edited it and you went out of the ground floor window. And so I was just obsessed with like the magic. And and then my dad made the grave mistake of bringing me to see 2001 when I was like 8. And I sat there and I watched this monolith, and I was like, it's like when monkey people are jumping around. I leaned over to him and I was like, what is that? What is it? And he goes, it's symbolic. I go, of what? He goes, man's quest. And I'm 8, and I was just like, somehow understood it on some level. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to Herbie the Love Bug too. Symbolism. What is going on? I'm not catching it, So I became kind of obsessed with the underlying messages that film would have for you. And I found like that was a kind of thing that was a little more native to film than maybe theater might have. So anyway, I ended up starting making them as a teenager, just little crappy little things on Super 8. And then eventually like, oh my God, I got a VHS camera, which I still have, still works. We got that and used that to make some movies. And then since then, I've personally made probably about a dozen, a few docs, and then 2 features, mostly acted though.
Okay. So what did your family and friends say? Hi, I'm going to be a filmmaker. I'm going to be an actor. They didn't say, go get a job, go learn engineering, go become a lawyer, go become a doctor. What was their response?
I think, if I may interject, for me, it was kind of a step up from doing theater. So they're like, yes, go make films that could be seen again and again, and you don't have to go perform over and over again. But no, like, in all honesty, I joke, but like, I really couldn't ask for more, like in the way of immediate family, in the way of extended family, like just a lot of support. And they think it's cool. And I don't know, no complaints. I see other friends and colleagues that don't do as, don't do as well in the way of family support. But I got no complaints. What about you, John?
I think for me, other than my mother's, foolish discouragement at age 11, I was always encouraged to, my folks had 6 kids, and it was just like, by the time I came along, number 5, there's like, whatever. My dad literally said to me, like, he sat me down once for 2 talks that I remember. And the two things that I remember, one was, I really am grateful that I never had to pick you up from prison, from jail.
I love that the expectations were so low.
By that time, yeah, he was just like, that was really good. I was like, actually, you did, but I was only like 14, so he forgot that, 13. But the other thing was, he sat me down one time when I was living in LA, and I was trying to just make my life as an actor, and I had 2 kids, and I hadn't really planned on having kids, but I had kids, and they were toddlers, and I was in LA, and that's just like, you're just a weird sort of like unicorn in LA when you have little bitty babies, right? And that's just like, Tiff,
yes.
like this.
I have 2 kids. Yep, I know.
Yeah, And it's so really weird for like, to be running around with them and be an actor and not have like a series, because most people would like, no, you don't do that because that kind of hurts your career. But my dad sat me down once and said, first of all, he was very supportive. I remember it being really, really moving. He said, you're not a failure. Because I was having trouble. I'd already been on a bunch of TV shows, but I was just like, I expected myself to be like a regular on a TV show. And I'd gone to network and I'd almost been, on sitcoms as like a lead. But instead, you feel like a loser. You get down to the final three on a series as a lead, and you're still like, you walk away, you don't get it. You're like, I am such a freaking loser. Why am I even doing this? And it's
Yeah.
such a tough business that filmmaking became a way to have some control of my art, and just not just as a means to cast myself, but to have some control. And about that time, my dad sat me down. He's like, I think it's time for you to decide to fish or cut bait. And I'll never forget that phrase, fish or cut bait. And I took that in. I was like, I quit acting for a while, but then I just leapt into filmmaking, because I had had so many negative experiences as an actor out there. I'd had like a crazy Me Too moment. If that happened to me, I was like, that's got to be this small compared to what every woman goes through. So I went into something where I was like, I could be the boss of the people. Didn't want to be a boss of the people. I could choose who I worked with.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to work with any a-holes. That was like the first thing. And I've just worked with so many a-holes in this business. And I kind of feel like I know who a good group of people is, and why there's no reason to have jerks around you on a film set. You don't need that. Tempers can flare and things like that. Again, in theater, we see it all the time. But um, that was sort of like the world discouraged me from acting, and I was sort of forced into finding something that I could do for myself. I came back to Chicago, started a theater company, and then started making films. Um, and yeah, that was a life changer. But I took a few years off, just doing nothing.
Okay. So in some ways, once again, you've answered this, but do you have a tribe, your support group, your tribe that that is yours, your creative tribe, your people that you have, the group? I know, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the one thing that for me is validating about this new venture, which, as I said, is really only like a year and a half old for me, as far as the producing and beginning, middle, and being a part of the entire film of it. It's like, it's very validating to have those people surround you. You see each other, here for this event and that networking event, and this person's reading, and that person's premiere, and you just start to be there for each other. And it just starts to be like, you have people you can call on, and you need a line producer, and you need like some PAs, and you start to just get to know everyone, and it just becomes very exciting to support each other and in everything that everybody's doing. So that's the one thing that's validating for me about this, is like, I'm like, I have coworkers. Like, it's not just people I see like for a couple days. It's like I have coworkers now. We see each other, we support each other. It's like a support group / coworkers, you know.
Uh,
But yeah, John.
And John, besides
Yeah,
Tiffany, I'm sure you have a larger tribe than that.
yeah, I do. Just this one has, she's had been sort of a little central the last couple of years, oddly, because yeah, I do have an ensemble. I have an ensemble called the Artistic Home Theater Ensemble in Chicago, and it's a small storefront theater that's been around. We've been equity, then non-equity, then equity, then non-equity, and we just bounce around because it's just gotten to the point we just want to work together. We just want to do the work we want to do with the people who want to do it. And if equity is going to demand that you have a stage manager that takes 1/3 of your entire box office in a 35-seat theater, then you leave for a while. You try to figure out.
You do what you got to do.
You do what you
Yeah.
got to do to do your work, but we're essentially a theater town. We're a theater town, and so but the work
That's how I
ethic,
met
work,
you, John. That was the first time I met you, actually. Was I did a show there in 2013. That's how we originally met. So yeah, in our theater world.
yeah. So I lean on a lot of folks from the theater. that I know. And and I'm always trying to expand it, but I've been very careful to sort of curate a group for myself, is to curate a group of people that I find share core values. And one, it's about the acting. I'm all about like spectacular images and strange images and shit. If you watch our movie, there's hardly any talking in that movie. It's filled with emotion and fitting descriptions, but it's almost without dialogue, which is really interesting. It's so cinematic by theater people. And there's no reason you can't do that. It's a chance to express emotion in a story that way. But yeah, it's such a theater town. You find yourself surrounded by theater people.
That's great. That's great. All right. So what made you decide whose idea was it to come up with fitting descriptions, and who was it driving?
All hers. I don't even belong in this conversation.
Get out of here.
All right. So what made you want to do this movie? He's
Yeah.
leaving.
So yeah, no, he's like, I don't even belong here. I'm leaving. No. No, what made me want to do it? This film in particular, this story in particular, really was spearheaded actually by my partner, my spouse, Dave Reedy, who's a writer as well, fiction writer, and was like, I am really inspired by some of the ideas and things that have happened to you in your acting life. Would you want to collaborate on a story together? So basically that's what we did. And I thought, honestly, I have to be honest, I was like, oh, he wants to write. That's what he does. He writes, like he'll go in a room and he'll write for days, weeks, months, years. Like and I'm like, oh, he wants to write a screenplay. And then it was finally done. We went through all the different drafts and iterations. And I'm like, okay, great. Literally, I'm holding this, but I would be like, dust my hands off. I was like, awesome. We made it. We made that. He's like, we're done with the script. We're going to produce it. I was like, what? I was like, we're going to produce it? What? So yeah, I don't know, like I might seem outgoing and confident, but I actually have a lot of imposter syndrome. And I was just like, I don't know how we can do that. I don't know the first thing about it. I don't know what to do. No way. Absolutely not. No. And he was like, well, we wrote it. Do you want someone else to act in it? And as Dina? And I was like, no, I want to play Dina. So it's just like, I'm going to play Dina. I'm going to produce it. I'm going to co-direct it, and we collaborated. And that's, so, but the story about fitting descriptions is parallel and happening in tandem along with my life. So that it is a little bit too close to home in a lot of ways to me as an actor. So it is about an actor who is turning 40 and she is feeling like the time ticking, like she's feeling like, did I do everything I was supposed to do or not? And her agent is literally like, this is not happening for you on camera. And you're going to need a rebrand. So she's like, what? And she's like, go outside, ask 10 strangers for their first impressions of you, write them all down, and then you'll know exactly who you are. And she's like, oh my God. And so she goes out, and P.S. I did this exercise in real life. I did it. And so, and it's with a coach, by the way. I'll decide by the end if I want to name her, because I don't know if she's offended by this, but truly it did end up being a very, useful exercise for me, but it was sort of traumatizing. When you're standing outside and you're just literally waiting for likes and comments from people in real life, like it's like social media, but in real life. That's a line in the film. The agent says, hey, just go outside, ask people for comments. It's just like asking, posting a selfie and asking for comments, but in real life, go on, go do it. And she's like, so yeah. So, it's in parallel to that, but then there are themes of self-actualization by the end. I won't spoil it, but she self-actualizes. She rebels against letting other people determine who she is. She does not have to be fitting descriptions of others. She gets to, make her own descriptions. And so that's what happens in the end. But there are themes of hearing and ears and hearing one's own voice, deafness throughout, which we can get to, I'm sure, in a minute. But I'm a CODA. I'm a child of deaf adults. Both my parents were born deaf. And when you talk about themes, John, as we started to write this, I thought it was a story about an actor finding her voice and producing. But I started to realize it's about a CODA finding her voice and embracing who she is, where she came from. And, we have a deaf actor in the film, and Robert Schleifer, who's this amazing actor. And I'm just like, this is where I'm going with this. she's a CODA. She's actually CODA. She's dressed as a giant ear, like you can't write this stuff. Yes, I also did that in real life.
And you actually did that.
I actually dressed as a giant ear for US Cellular in 2004 for a promotion called Talk Your Ear Off. Talk your ear off, US Cellular, talk your ear off. People are like, what? I don't want to hold that squishy ear. So that happened in real life. I'm like blending things that happened in real life. So this is a very long way of saying, pardon my long-winded way of saying, it's a self-actualizing story about a CODA, and it's happening to me right now as we speak. So it's a very meaningful story to me, and it's the beginning of other stories that I want to do about CODAs and deaf people. And yeah, there's our ear. There's our squishy ear.
That's her ear. We actually gave these out, and she actually gave these out.
I actually gave those out.
And she would say to them, hey, would you like an ear? And they're like, what? Like a stress ball. It's an ear. Like, God.
People dropped it. And I also had a real dad in real life in 2004 be like walking with his son down the street going like, hey, do you, what is this? And I'm like, it's here, US Cellular, talk your ear off, hand him an ear. He lets it drop to the ground. And he's just like, says to his son, this is why you go to college.
Oh my God. And that made it into the film. Yeah,
yeah.
That's in the film.
I watched your movie, so yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of this crap happened to me. A lot of this shit happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I made I had to make that a long one because this is a lot to it. John, I don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot. Yeah, I mean, so she came up to me and she's like, would you like to help me direct this? I want to be a director. I'm like, shit, I've never co-directed in my life. And I kind of like, I don't believe in it. But then as after that experience, a good guy and a couple of things where I'm trying to train myself to just go, yes, say yes. Say yes. Like, don't get stuck in something. I was like, sure, worked out great. It's fine. Worked out fantastic. And it was, you could tell the thing was that the script was just really well written. And for me, it had a lot of mystery to it. And to me, I don't want to go into something. I find it terrible that you have to write about things only that not about things that you're curious about. And for me, it had so much mystery and interest. Like, that's why I do art. I don't only write about things that I know. I write about things that I'm curious about so I can work that out. I know something about it. I suspect something about it. Maybe I can bring a perspective to it. Maybe I can do that thing, which is like make a movie only I can make that other people want to see. And both of those things are mysteries. Like, it's a challenge to do either of those things. But I felt like this one, I'm like, boy, this is worth exploring. She and David made something really interesting. All the ear and sound themes. I grew up with a dad who was like always had headsets on, and he was such a sound guy. He's always about sound. So now I'm all about sound. And so people say, what's the first image of your movie? When I'm a teacher, I'll be like, what's the first sound in your movie? What's the very first thing they hear? Because that's a way into the emotions, oftentimes way more than the visual. And people will say things like, oh, what a great image. And deacons will say, when someone says, what a great shot, it probably isn't. It draws too much attention to itself. But sound, people never say, what a great sound, because what it's doing to you is it's worming its way into you and helping support the emotional journey when done right. So I was really excited about that. Also, I grew up with a dad who gradually lost all his hearing. And so he just became isolated, and he had these hearing aids and they didn't work, towards the end. So I have all these congenital fears around that. I just liked all the things. And I was like, I kind of wanted to go on a journey. I just gotten done with the feature, and I when you get done with the feature, you're like, that's when you should make another movie because you've learned so many lessons. So right. This was a gift. Yeah. This is a real gift.
Yeah. Okay, great. What was the hardest part and what was the most fun part of making this movie?
I'll start. There was nothing hard about it by comparison to any other time. This is the easiest movie I've ever made. I was waiting. I had the producer of Good Guy with a Gun. He once said to me, oh man, going into production is like going into battle. And this guy had actually been in battle.
Wow.
And for me, yeah, it's like an expedition, it's like an expedition. And this was just maybe finding locations, the perfect location, she and I were like very obsessed about a couple of specific things. Yeah, Tiffany's level of obsession is mine
Yeah.
is second only to hers. And
Yeah.
so maybe that was it. Beyond that, yours were much your things you dealt with were much greater than I did.
Maybe. I mean, for me, it was difficult only in that everything was new to me. Like figuring out how to work with SAG, trying to get SAG contracts, trying to get insurance. I'm like, how do you get insurance? And then it's like rejected for insurance, rejected for insurance. And I'm like, what? I can't even get insurance. And then we get insurance, just all of the minutia of what happens in pre-production and going up to it. And then the crunch week of just being like, oh God, I just, there were a lot of things. I will say that I wouldn't call it hard. It was just all new, and new is very scary to me. So that was scary, but I had a Sherpa in John and in Will and in my team where it's like, the perfectionist imposter syndrome in me kept going, no, you don't know what you're doing. I'm like, no, this is a collaborative process. If you don't know what's happening, ask somebody, lean on your team, like everybody. And if you don't, and no one knows, okay, then like pick up the phone and call, that's what I had to do. Like call someone. Okay. Call SAG, Just Jones. Hey, what's up? Like, what contract does this have to be? And that's just, the not in John, you're very just like, I'm not interested in that. I don't want to know. Like,
no, I just got another
no.
feature that was just awful. Back when I went to school in Madison, there was a big theory school for film. And then it was a theater school, and there were like no real famous actors that came out of Madison except like Jane Kasmerick, but it was a real intense traditional theater department, and it was not designed for film in any way. And then I was in the film department as well, and there was very much stay in your lane kind of attitude, throughout the 80s and until probably early 90s when the digital revolution happened. But at that point, and everybody that's watching that's involved in this fest who is over 40 knows what I'm talking about. It was like, what are you going to do? You're an actor. People in the film crew would be like suspicious of you. Now everybody's a hyphenate. Everybody, thank God. It's like, yeah, I'm a grip. We got a guy out here that comes up here. This guy's sharp. I can't wait to read his work. He's helping us develop the next thing. He's like, yeah, I injured my shoulder. I'm a dolly grip, but I got a podcast and I do this stuff on, like a whole series on writing. And that dude's going to make a film. And he's sensitive to that the important thing is the acting. And that's a grip.
Mhm. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That didn't used to happen.
I know, it's the best.
The grip with Teamsters.
Oh yeah, you did.
I said the grips with Teamsters. They were.
Oh, I
I
think
gotta move this. Get out of my way, you useless human.
Oh, yeah. I was a sound engineer for years, and if you want to be the most useless human, be an actor and a boom op. That was like the lowest of the low. And I spent 10 years doing that. I remember a lot thinking, I'll be hiring you all someday.
I hear you. All right. So, okay, this is also to both of you. It's true. I was going to close the conversation, which is great. You guys are awesome. But we're going to run out of time. We have about 10 more minutes.
Sure.
When you do a film, all right, when you're done with the film, is it okay? I'm done with that film. I'm releasing it out to the world. My child is gone. Or is it you did that film and you spend the rest of your life looking back on it going, I could have done that better. I should have done that better. And every once in a while you go, I'm going to reshoot that and, make it better.
I already am like, I want to re-edit this. And this is my first film. So that's all I have to say. And I'm going to let that go. The perfectionist me has to let that go and say it is what it is. It's out in the world and it's the baby it is. Just like real children, none of us are perfect. None of them are perfect. We're not perfect. So let that go in the world and try again on the next one. What about you, John?
I think that is a great example of what I established in my mind as your greatest hurdle.
Like, you gotta stop, Tiffany. It's
time
to stop.
You gotta let go. That's one of the things film does let you do, because theater enforces that upon you. It's out. You did it. You can't. If you want to be good in the next moment, you can't be thinking about the last one, right? You can't. You just can't. So like this has been a bit of a thing where I'm like, yeah, I just got to get over that, let it go out into the world, and so I'm not, there's nothing in this film in particular that I watch and just like eats me alive in the dark hours of the night or every time I'm in the theater. I'm like, God, I hate that. But my feature, Good Guy with the Gun, there's a couple things in there. I'm like, still kills me, still kills me. But you know what? I try to see, you try to take the victories. Otherwise, it will, if you're a perfectionist, which a lot of people are that get this like point in their career, like I'm going to make a movie, I'm going to do that. It can kill your joy. It can kill your desire, right?
Absolutely.
You have to protect your creativity and your joy, and you have to take the victories that are there and accept like, okay, that 5 minutes wasn't what I wanted to be, but that 10 minutes is great, or that 40 minutes is great.
And it was
there's a
better than
couple
I
little
thought
things.
it would be, or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
yours was, yeah, at yours, Jesus, fitting descriptions. I sit and watch that. I have no problems.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, but I'm sure there's stuff in there for you that
Yeah. And
probably
you know
eats
what's
you alive.
interesting?
But
It's more like, oh, I would do this, I would do that, I would tweak this, I would do that. Okay, this should be another, half second longer or whatever. Like, just not, you got to let it go. But I do think filming, it's interesting. Like, I just think in a year, if I made the same exact film, it's just interesting. Like, it'd be different.
yeah,
So I think a film is like, it intersects with you where you are in your life. And it's that one little intersection. And that's where that film is, and
what
if
a
you made it in a
great,
year, yeah,
what a
you'd
great
make it different.
analogy. It's a marker in your life, and you would make it, but that's who you were then, and that's what
Exactly.
the edit was that you made then, and
Right.
that's and the movie you make next, you apply that and you take that, and sometimes you're like, damn, my instincts were sharper then. It's such a boy, that's a longer conversation. That's
Yeah.
such an interesting thing. We
All
just
right.
got to make another one soon.
We'll have
Okay,
it after the call.
yeah.
Okay, so now here's the next question. Inside the indie world, we're not buying mansions, we're not going to buy yachts, we're not going to have private planes. What constitutes success in the indie film world? What is success? What do you see it as?
Boy, for me, it's like, did you get your vision? Did you get your vision on the film? Do people see you in there? Did you get it up there? Now can people see it? That to me, it's like you can't put money or a monetary sort of value on that. You have to, like, did you make the movie that only you can make, that other people are wanting to see? And to me, I think I adopted this thing early because I kind of come from a little more like science family. I'm like, okay, if there's a pie chart and there's 15 or 20% of the people that are crazy about my work, and then there's 25 that hate it and the rest are okay, I'm really excited about that 20%. I'm going to try and build that part of that pie chart. So
Absolutely.
that's sort of like,
Yeah.
is there an acceptable number of people that really love your work that sort of helps you connect to the world in a better way, and you've worked some part of your life and your journey out and shared it with people? To me, that's like, okay,
That's success.
then I'm doing something worth, yeah.
Yeah.
And you, Tiffany?
Same, I would say, in indie film, did the writer, it really starts with the writer. So like, did that story come to fruition in a satisfying way? And was the collaborative process after that, after they let their baby go, was it just, did every creator from beginning, middle to end get to have their say, and was everyone respected along the way? I mean, obviously the product is one thing, but it's really the creating of the process, right? Once it's out and people see it, it's great, it's fun. And like, I love the film festival process, like the whole circuit, it's really great and people get to experience it, but it's the making of it. It's when you're creating it. So, right? Isn't it? It's
Yeah,
that's
I love
when
that you
the
said that.
electricity,
That's kind of like, that's such a, I think that is subtly, very subtly specific point of view you just said from a theater person, because you're respecting the writer from the very first. I'm like, get the writer off, and that writer is usually me. It's usually me. So I've just learned to take that writing. I was like, oh, that sucks. Just drill that off. I've learned. But Dave was so great. He was so great in that process, and it started with this. and he's a theater partner, he's a theater husband. So that guy understands what that is. But it starts the writing, respect for it. But there was also experimentation and letting people, as a kid, was raised by a jazz freak and jazz musicians, and a couple generations back, it was like, you got to hit like 4 notes. You got to hit these points. But in between, there's this thing called wiggle room. And that is a responsibility for you to figure out what your wiggle room is in there. And everybody is expected to create their own sort of like thing in that area where you are given the opportunity. And I think we provided the environment for people to do that.
Totally.
It's so clear you want to create a thing like that for people, just healthy.
For sure.
We need more filmmakers like that.
The film Fitting Descriptions will be shown Friday, June 7th at 4:00 with the Great Salatino War is going to be the feature it's going to be with. So that's going to happen at the New York City Independent Film Festival. And thank you very much for being here, both of you.